part of what my job is. So the BTUs or the megajoules that are actually produced of the energy that comes from hemp is one of the highest of any energy crops that can be grown, miscanthus and others that have been grown strictly in order to produce energy, right? And so that's what's really cool about it. For us, what we're creating is renewable natural gas, okay? RNG for our acronym. So renewable natural gas can be used in every...
Hey guys, it's Mandi with Global Hemp Association. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I'm excited about the opportunity to build a relationship and connect this supply chain. I mean, after all, that's why we started the association. Our association was built on the foundation of connecting supply chain, building relationships, and helping you grow your business. Anyone from farmers, manufacturers, and distributors, people that are passionate about the supply chain, and those creating products selling into biofuels, plastics, textiles, construction, and building materials.
And welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Please drop in and say hello today. We're going to be talking about co-ops. I'm really excited about this and what Nick and his team have going on. Nick's with the National Hemp Growers Co-op. And Nick, before we get started and kind of dive into the hemp industry, tell me a little bit about your background. I want to know, how did you get here? What is your background specifically in your rural and economic development space?
Well, that's cool that you should say. My mother asked me, and my banker asks me all the time, what is it you do for a living? Because I'd really like to kind of really understand how all that fits to do. So kind of my hemp aha moment, as I like to call them, happened as a buildup, like a lot of us that have been into this space now. I took a tour through a unusual path, which has been in politics. And so it hasn't been, I might as well say used car salesman, or I might as well say, something else that's what got me here. But I was fortunate enough to be appointed by President George W. Bush to run the office of USDA-Rural Development here in my home state of Mississippi. And my two U.S. senators are the ones that put me into that job. And what I learned while I did about $5 billion, no, it's not correct, back up, $1 billion worth of federal government money went through during my tenure just in Mississippi from USDA. And that could have been everything from electric co-ops to, fire trucks and housing and pieces like that. But one of the parts of USDA that I learned a lot about that I didn't know anything about were cooperatives. Now, I'm from a small town. I'm a 7th generation Mississippian. We've got a co-op back home. Okay. So it's not like I haven't seen a co-op, but that was kind of my reference point, right? Was just the place where we would go get pecans shelled, or, and it's pecan, by the way, for any of you who think the word is pecan, it's not. Okay. It's a pecan. And so, or, whichever way we wanted to, whatever you want to call it. So I learned about this whole division at USDA that was just strictly built around co-ops. And that's all they do. And they just help to build the infrastructure, the economic development pieces, the help guide legal and other things that they can give guidance to for development of co-ops. And so it was from that, after talking to one of my longtime friends that I've known for 30 years, Roger Ford, who was in Kentucky. Roger was one of the very first people to get a hemp license after the 2014 Farm Bill that allowed Kentucky to have a pilot program. He was on, the governor appointed him to a state advisory board for hemp. So I just knew Roger knew a ton about it. And I just said, man, I'm learning more about this hemp stuff. And I had a group that came to me that wanted me to help them put together some financing. And so that's a large part of what I learned while I was state director, was how to match government money and local bond money or grant money or bank money. How do you pull all that together to do a project? And so I got into hemp that way through trying to help some folks put together in an extraction facility for CBD. And because the good Lord looks after fools and children, he looked after me enough on that time to go, hey, you don't want to be in this thing. But I started thinking about hemp and learning more about it. And I called Roger. I said, man, it just looks to me like the one group of people that are getting screwed over in this industry over and over and over again are the farmers or the growers. They're the ones that thought they had contracts that were going to, pay out, or they jumped out there too quickly in some cases, planted a whole bunch of acres, thought something was coming together, and that ended up hosing up. So there's just got to be a better way to do it. And we then started and put together the National Hemp Growers Co-op, and as we are continually moving on that every day. So as you will find, Mandi, and as you probably know from our conversations we've had, because you were kind enough to be a guest on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, I have the spiritual gift of over answering the question. So you always have to corral me back in, okay? Because sometimes I'll go to preaching and don't even know I'm doing it.
No, I like it. Okay, so I want to talk about the co-ops.
Okay.
As I slide away here. How first, when you got into this, how did you know that hemp, like why hemp as its a co-op for its own entity and not sharing or joining up with these existing co-ops that may add hemp as a crop to be processed? Why separating them?
That's a super cool question, because every co-op that has been successful that I'm aware of has been singly focused on one particular crop. If it is a production agriculture co-op, keep in mind, Sam's Club and Costco are versions of co-ops, right? I mean, credit unions can be co-ops. I mean, there's a myriad. It's how do I pool my money, and I pool my money with other people who pool their money, and then we go do something with all that money. There can be purchasing co-ops. I mean, just all kinds of things. But for production agriculture, while the co-op member may be a member of various co-ops, like I might be a part of a corn cooperative, or I might be a member of a cotton cooperative, they really have to stay focused within the things like genetics and things like seed and things like how you plant and what those temperate zones are. And you would just get too spread out, and you really got to be singly focused.
Okay, so talk about being spread out. When I got into this industry, what I noticed were there was a lot of smaller associations that strategically helped their region or a specific vertical, right? Like the U.S. Hemp Growers Association, or U.S. Hemp Builders Association, or Mississippi, Hemp Growers Association, but not necessarily a bigger span or global span. And I saw this need for a larger market and support and bringing international business and international trade, right? Talk to me about where you guys decided on the national versus state specifically.
Well, one of the reasons, keep in mind now, there's a difference between an association and a cooperative. Right. I mean, I don't mean that you don't know that. I just mean that so we were not interested in creating yet another association, right? There were great groups like you and then great regional groups like, the Midwest Hemp Council and folks like that are fantastic and doing all kinds of good things. We just didn't want to go to fill that space. We didn't want to try to fill the space on the regulatory, lobbying, legal space of any of that either. Our whole goal of everything we do when we get up every morning is how do we build wealth for our members? So ours is member focused, and what do our members, how they are going to build wealth. Okay. One component of the larger, and then I'm gonna get to the national question, but one of the components of all of that is that there certainly is an education arm to the cooperative that we are not going to duplicate in those areas or those states where there's great agronomy or education or an extension service or somebody that is already there that is helping those growers. Okay. So that's one reason we wanted to make it national, is we wanted to make sure that the folks that were growing in Oregon could share some information. While it might not be exactly what is needed for a grower in Georgia, there still is a ton of dialogue and sharing of info and things that would make it a lot easier. That was one reason. The other reason is because of the hemp plant itself, right? Because it does so many daggum things. Why would we keep the grain production strictly in the northern parts of the U.S. and only be focused on grain production? Because the further south you go, the less opportunity there is to get a good grain crop. It's going to do much better in those northern tiers. The closer we get to Canada, the better off you are for grain. So we didn't want to limit ourselves to what the plant could do by limiting ourselves to saying, well, we're just going to be grain but because fiber can go anywhere and we can use fiber for so many different things, that gave us an opportunity to spread it all around. The third reason is that our dividend structure, the way we put our model together on our business model for this would enable small farmers, meaning small landowner farmers, meaning people who are really growers. Sidebar, that's why we call this the Growers Cooperative and not the Farmers Cooperative, because we have plenty of people who have never been involved in production agriculture before, but have 20, 30 acres, 10 acres, and want to be a part of what we're doing. Where are they going to send their crop? Who is going to purchase it? Well, if I'm out in the middle of BFE, wherever the heck, and I've only got this number of acres, and I may not have an opportunity to participate if a production facility is 4 states over. So if we're able to think of it in a national scope based off of the different contractual relationships we would be involved in, it empowers the smaller landowner who wants to get into the hemp growing business, that it empowers them and gives them an opportunity to do all that. And then I would say the last reason is it's just because it gives us more opportunity for revenue, because our whole model is built so that we don't keep going back in what is kind of the typical co-op model, where we're going back for looking for more capital or more cash to come from our members in order to put back into the processing facility. Our model is not built that way, that we have to keep going back to them. So does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I just saw a huge shift, right? We've seen a big shift recently from the cannabinoid production that was, more regionally grown to a much larger supply chain and demand that requires a national co-op or a national relationship where we can distribute where the input is, right? Where the farms are. Okay. So talk to me about your pay. Something that really intrigues me, and as I'm out talking about the co-op and the need for collaboration amongst farmers in order to secure these large contracts in the supply chain, there's a lot of reservation to the term co-op, right? Can you speak to how yours is different and how the farmer is benefiting financially in your business model?
Yes, I think there's a couple of answers to that question. So let me kind of move towards those.
Yeah.
One is that our model is not a democracy, it's a republic. All right. Just like, and I'm saying this because I'm also an adjunct history professor, so it's kind of hard for me not to throw out the history analogies in the middle of all of that. I think our founders got it right in the sense that you as a citizen have a say-so in who your representatives are. But this is not a democracy that we poll you every 5 minutes and ask you, should we vote for this or should we not vote for that? And so while you as a common stockholder, and a common stockholder in the co-op is anyone who is a licensed active hemp grower, they can be growing 1 acre or 1,000 acres. It doesn't make any difference. So there is some democracy in part of that everyone's kind of equal on that level. You then go through a series of elections of representatives and people that are delegates that end up on a national board. And that national board is the one that enters into the long-term contracts and agreements such as that. So while you have a say-so, you only have a say-so as much as your representatives who you elected are doing a good job. If they're not doing a good job, well, then you get new ones, right? I mean, you have a recall election or something and get rid of them and get the ones that you think are representing you best. The reason that helps the farmer or the grower is this. is that these national contracts, or any contract that we want to negotiate on behalf of those growers, that group from whom we have the contract has to have the comfort level to know that we're going to be around year after year after year. And one of the big problems that happens with co-ops is that you'll get in there one annual meeting and somebody's mad at somebody else, or they don't think they're getting enough dividend payment, or they'll do something and they'll totally undo everything that's been done the past couple of years you've been working on. Let's just take, for example, some of our biofuels projects, and we can get into that as much as you care to. But those are $85–90 million investments. It takes 2 years to build them, probably a good 6–8 months just to be able to site develop and pull all the pieces together. And so if I've got a contract to produce renewable natural gas or jet fuel or biodiesel or whatever it is, and we're using hemp as a part of that mix, because we are really doing that, then the last thing I'm going to do is tell the folks with whom we have the contract to sell the biodiesel, oh, I just don't know if we're going to be here. We got a couple of board members that were mad and thought that they ought to get an extra $5, instead of it. And so ultimately, then that helps that grower to know that the person to whom they are selling, right,
It's secured.
is secure, and it's secure in us, and it's a two-way relationship like that.
Yeah.
That's a huge piece of it. The other is, as I kind of mentioned previously, is we're not always coming back to the those co-op members that we're tapping them all the time for more capital. I've seen that happen too. So in the kind of traditional model, and let me just say this too, by the way, we are not for everybody, right? Not everybody is going to want to participate in this model this way. There are other models and other folks who really want to have the democratic model where they all get to have a say-so. And that's fine, and welcome to America. Okay, that's just not our model. But in this model, we know that it works so much better for long-term contractual things, because we are not having to go back to that co-op member. So let's just say we were a dairy co-op and wherever the heck, and somewhere in Wisconsin, and we were all making ice cream and buttermilk and cheese and all the good stuff, and all those dairy farmers from around that circle have all pulled together, and we've got the processing facility where all the milk is coming in, and we're, well, let's just say that there's a certain piece of equipment that's going to enable us to make ice cream quicker or better, and we need another $875,000. Well, many times under the kind of the typical model, those co-op members now have to go re-up more cash to put into the co-op in order to buy that piece of equipment. And there's a business case that would show you, we invest this, we're going to be able to make more of this or something like that. But we just didn't like that model, to think that we always had to go back to our grower to be able to get more capital. We want to give them the option to get more capital, but put more in for more return, but not because we had to rely on them. So I would really say those two things would be the things that would make the biggest difference about that. Would be the fact that there's stability in the marketplace to let them know that our co-op is going to be around, and regardless of who the particular board members might be at any given day, that doesn't mean that the co-op doesn't still keep on living. And the other is that we go back, and we're not going back to our grower members for more capital infusion.
Okay, so then talk to me a little bit about the dividends. How are those divided?
Terrific. So because we have these two types of stockholders, we have common stockholders that are the voting members that I mentioned earlier, and we have preferred stockholders, right? And so preferred stockholders are people who just invest, and they invest in the pro forma. They like the things that we're doing. They want to put their money in, and they would like to get some of that dividend. And then we take their cash and we put it into the mix, and it helps us keep the trains running on time. Okay. So regardless of whether you're a common stockholder or whether you are a preferred stockholder, either one of those gives you an opportunity for a dividend. So the way we've set it up is that based off of a contract or an agreement that we have to do some value add to hemp, of which CBD is not going to be a part of that at any time in the future that we can imagine. It's all going to be grain and fiber. So let's just say that we have some hemp proteins that we're going to make from some grain, and our growers in Minnesota and North Dakota and Michigan are going to be the ones that are going to provide that. Well, we might have a facility that we would locate right in that area in order to produce fulfill the contract. That would be its own separate business unit. So let's just call it the Upper Midwest Protein Production LLC. Okay, and then I would go back and use my skill set and understanding rural economic development and where we would place it and when do we need it and when does our contract, all that stuff we'd figured out, and we decided we landed it at X location at Anyville, Minnesota. Well, that is going to be a separate LLC. And in that particular LLC, then the co-op itself, the national co-op, would own 25 to 30% as a starting place for that LLC. So they're going to own that right out. So if I live in Opelousas, Louisiana, and I am a co-op member, I'm going to have part of my dividend check is coming from the profits of that facility in Minnesota, even though I've not sold them one stalk of hemp. Okay. The second way that you're helped if you're a co-op member, and this goes back to the dividend, but that's more of the dividend piece. You don't also, if you are or live within the 100 miles of wherever it is that we're going to put that facility, then you also would get the opportunity to have a contract to grow part of the hemp that would go into that facility that we would be using to process for. So if we have done our job right, and we expect to do our job right, what we actually will have accomplished is lowering the cost of the inputs. Okay. And the inputs are lower because we're bulk purchasing. Guess what? Here's a news flash for you. Did you know that Costco can buy paper towels a heck of a lot cheaper than you and I can? Well, of course they can. Why? Because they're buying in bulk. They're buying cajillions of them. Well, we're not going to be buying cajillions of tractors, but we're going to be buying insurance, tractors, seed, in addition to the education pieces that will lower those costs of those inputs, so that when we contract with you for hemp, which is really kind of a misnomer, you're really contracting with yourself because you're one of the members, right? Is that how that all gets factored in? So now you've got two bites at the apple, right? You've got one bite in your dividend check that's coming to you because you're just a co-op member. Okay. The second then is you've got an opportunity to go and sell your hemp back to that facility, right? And then I guess the third way that you're able to get revenue is that in that same LLC, if you wanted to invest more of the capital we needed to put in that LLC to pull off that production facility, well, then you could put even more in if you wanted to.
Which is more like that option is standard co-op model.
Yeah, it's up to you. But some co-ops now would limit you to how much you could buy.
Right.
And that has to do with how many shares you could buy in the cooperative. You're only getting one share in the co-op. Okay. How much of a percentage of that particular LLC would you like? We'll offer all of that to co-op members first. And first off, for stockholders, preferred or common stockholders, before we would go back for seeking other investment, or before we would go borrow the money, or any other way we would fill the rest of that out. So dividends are paid out that way, and so your dividend check is coming from all of these different LLCs throughout the country, in addition to revenue you would be getting if we're buying hemp from you, in addition to investment that you may decide you want to make above and beyond
sure
any one of those facilities.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of your projects. This is where I get excited, and I know that this is a lot. So if people have questions, let's just take a real quick break. How do people find you, Nick, if they want to connect or if they want to dive in and learn a little bit more or get involved?
Awesome. Well, the National Hemp Co-op.us is our website. We would be glad to send anybody who is interested an information packet and let them know more about what we're talking about right here and kind of how it works and the way that we are launching and pulling that together. We'd be glad to do that. We have a full-time agronomist on staff with us who's a PhD from Colorado State. He lives in Denver. He was just here and took a southern swing about 2 weeks ago to go check on some seed trials. Love to tell about our seed trials as well. Please. That we're doing. Okay. Yeah. So we're there. We're on all the social media stuff, right? I mean, folks can connect to me at LinkedIn. I can put my email address in somewhere if that shows up. I don't know how that. I'd have to get my glasses on and figure out how to do it. But I mean,
I'll do it for you.
They're welcome to email me or to call. Be glad to talk to folks. But we have a full one of our founding members is our full-time membership coordinator. And he would love to get on the phone and be able to talk to you chapter and verse and get you a packet of info and all of that. So
awesome. Okay. So I don't know if you want to start with seed trials. These are two topics I really want to dive into. And here it's the seed trials and the existing projects. And then projects that you see as real opportunities moving forward, maybe that you haven't necessarily been able to disclose, but what do you see as opportunity?
All right, let's start there and work our way back. Is that okay? All right. So there are some, but we are not able to disclose them, okay? Because they are still, as you can imagine, in a competitive environment, not everybody wants everybody knowing their business yet, right? But we don't launch anything until we've got a contract in our hand that we have made sure is going to best as we can, is going to, the check's going to clear the bank, right? That's been one of the biggest problems with growers throughout our country is that not just the people that said, well, I'm going to grow it and I hope somebody will buy it. That's a little risky and maybe a little silly, okay, to do that, quite frankly. But I'm talking about, I mean, but
nicely put,
but people that had a contract in their hand that expected it to close and then it didn't, that's a different ballgame. And so we're doing the vetting. So when I say we've got a contract and we're doing something, it's either going to be a joint venture with somebody else that is producing some particular product. And that we know that product's going to be there and we know how long the contract's going to be. We know how much we can, all of that math has been done. Okay. So we've got right now 11 projects in the funnel that we are at different levels of discussion with, trying to get to the end to decide if we can put our chocolate in their peanut butter to make it work. Okay. If it's not going to, because it's not going to work every time. But what we love having discussion with is anybody or any group that says, well, I've got two particular issues. I don't know where my farmers are coming from and where my biomass is coming from, or where I'm going to be able to get the hemp. Where is that coming from? And the second is I don't know how I'm going to pay for all of this to really ramp up to the production I'm doing. Those folks, we'd love to have those dialogues with folks to be able to get an idea of what that looks like. And we can split the baby all kinds of different ways. We're not married to any one way it's got to be. We're doing joint ventures, exploring with some folks. Other folks, we are just supplying them with a particular product. So we've got a bunch of those in the funnel right now, none of which I'm able to disclose yet to do all that. Let's talk about seed trial and then we'll talk about our biofuel project. Is that okay? Because that's
please.
A really cool one. So particularly in the southeastern United States, it's been kind of a black hole of information. You got an intruder? Are you okay? So,
yeah, my daughter just walked in and it's scary.
Okay.
Anyways, you go ahead. I can usually see her in my mirror in the screen, and we couldn't today. And so
that's okay. Don't worry about that. Somebody told me the other day, said, here's the difference between your dog and your wife. If you locked both of them in your trunk for a week, your dog's the only one to be glad to see you. So just keep all that in. The seed trials is that there's just a black hole of information, particularly in the Southeast, of what will actually grow and what will grow here. Not only because of all these bad actors and jokers that were seed salesmen and hucksters that sold people junk, okay, on seed, but just the legit seed, right? The things that are actually, that have the right genetics to them. We don't know enough about what will actually grow here. So we did seed trials in 6 different plots in Mississippi and Louisiana this earlier part of the summer. And they had various success to them. We have seen it grow, okay, and we know that it will grow. There are 2 companies that we are not ready to disclose that yet either, because we're in the middle of conversation, but I would call them some of the premier, if not the premier, North American genetic seed companies that know what the heck they're doing. They don't know the answer any more than we know the answer to what will grow in the Southeast. Now, that's not just because many of us come from the southeastern part of the U.S. It happens to also be that it's because we don't know what'll grow here, and so we got to figure all of that stuff out. And the way, so we're going to do seed trials this spring. We're aggressively going to be looking for 9 different states, a couple of growers from each state, depending on which variety of each variety. So we want them to be co-op members and to be a part of the co-op, and for us to do all the things that we're trying to learn about what will grow here. Part of the answer for that is, and why particularly in the Southeast, we think long term for our neck of the woods of basically being east of the Mississippi is one of the things we don't have to worry about as much as our friends to the west is water. And we don't, and we've got plenty of it, right? And temperate zones that are in temperate zone 6, 7, and 8, which is kind of covers most of this area. We know it'll grow. We just don't know what'll grow in the right variety of that. So we're super looking forward to that, about getting some of that in the ground. That's why our agronomist, Dr. Dave Cornett is his name. Can I do a quick plug for Dr. Dave real quick while I'm on here? Starting in, we hope by the end of this, within the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a Facebook Live event every other week that will be in the evening called Ask Dr. Dave. And so he is going to have various agronomy friends and other people on the show with him. And it's just pinging questions at him to say, I had this trouble with this, and I don't know how this is working. And what if I pack the dirt too much and it's not coming up right? Or, he's got folks from Extension and people from who are at universities all over the country, as well as folks who are just, by golly, in the middle of it every day, farmers that have done it before.
Can we share that through Global Hemp Association?
Heck yeah. Because we're proud members of the Global Hemp Association. And so we always want to do anything. We love what you do, Mandi, and we love what the association is doing. We've had a ton of value from it already. And I said that about you before you ever had me on as a guest. So let's just make sure we clear that up. Okay. So
thank you.
That's right. So our seed trials, we're excited as heck about that. We've actually talking to 3 more companies that have said, whoa, we want to be in. We want to be in on the seed trial too. So Dr. Dave is coordinating and quarterbacking all of that. I can't get ahead of my skis because I don't know any more than what I'm telling you right now, other than getting it all lined up.
Yeah, let's be sure we plug him in and get access for our farmers. That's one area that we want to really focus on is the education. And so collaborating with you guys on that, I'd love to make sure that everyone that's connected through Global Hemp Association has those resources also.
Heck yeah.
Drew has a really good question on here. He says, are the seed trials including cannabinoid, grain, and fiber varietals?
It's just grain and fiber, and it's just going to be grain for sure. Now, there may be some cannabinoids that we grow even though they're grown typically as cannabinoids, where we don't harvest them for cannabinoids, and we just let it keep growing to see how we could use it as a fiber crop. I think I can kind of say this, and I don't want to get too far out there, but let me say this way. There are a number of universities that have their own extension service that are particularly in the southeastern United States that are very interested in taking this leg of the seed trial of how do we grow cannabinoid seed that we would then, with the full goal that it would be used for fiber, and that we're not going to use it for cannabinoids or for the flower part of it. So we're hoping that that will come together where they will take that specific concept of just the cannabinoid piece. Let's see what happens, how we grow it for fiber. And the other thing we have an opportunity of here in the Southeast as well is we can get into grow seasons pretty easy. At least it ain't as hard, right, for us to be able to get that in. So cool question. Great question.
Good job. Thanks, Drew. Thanks for joining. Yeah. Anybody else that's joining, feel free. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Chris had a question earlier, was wondering about shipping concerns within the industry. You know, as you guys are harvesting or starting to, really see, especially as processing facilities are not as spread out as we need them to be yet, what type of shipping facilities?
Well, I think that what they're finding is that what we're finding and what we like is to know that's a turnkey thing that we don't want to have to fool with dealing with all that. And we want to take some groups that know what the heck they're doing. We've enjoyed some preliminary great conversations with the guys at 357 who have done a great job.
I was just going to give a plug to Kevin.
And yeah, hooray. And so Kevin's been a guest on our podcast. And I would say groups like that are who we want to rely on. Because quite frankly, I just don't want to have to fool. I don't need another thing in my head that I've got to go figure out. And if somebody's an expert in what they do, why in the Sam Hill do I want to think I got to go figure that thing out? I don't.
It's that collaboration. So. Sure. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, you want to talk about? No, you go. You're the queen.
No. What were you going to ask me? I was going to go back to seed trials and ask some of the real complications. What are some things that you saw as far as, and maybe you're not the ins and outs on it, but what are some things that you really saw? I know one thing that when I was out in North Carolina, it was very interesting to me. The fields or the spots on the fields that received too much water or puddled had no hemp. No hemp grown at all compared to, and that's very different than anything we see on like alfalfa, especially in Utah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think one of the things that we've learned that is pretty obvious, but now we can tell people this is the case. For somehow or another, there's some urban legend out there that hemp doesn't need fertilizer and it doesn't need water, or bugs can't eat it. I don't mean don't need water. It needs water, obviously, but or they're impervious to bugs or something. What a bunch of hooey that is. So
no pesticides.
The problem is for us on this particular trial is just quite frankly the certification of the various seed varieties to get through the state seed boards to approve the seed to be put in the ground. We got hung up in we had two other states where we wanted to grow besides Mississippi and Alabama. Besides Mississippi and Louisiana. One of the reasons we were able to get it done in Mississippi is one of those states that does not have a hemp program at the state level. It's all run by USDA at ARS. So there was no, they had to care about seed, but they didn't have to care about it wasn't as complicated to get it done. Plus one of our co-op members who lives in Louisiana, Brian Bollier is his name. Brian is our coordinator on all of our seed stuff. He's going to continue to coordinate for us on seed. He's got a company called Oakish Mounds outside of Shreveport, and Brian just did a awesome yeoman's job of working with the folks in Louisiana to get that seed done. So we're going to get all of that legal mojo stuff figured out and all of those, before we ever start the trial. That was really a huge piece of it. The other thing on more of a practical piece was we had way more rain. We had some spots where we had about 10 days of, animals lining up 2 by 2 rain. Okay. I mean, it was way, 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 way more than anything that we were accustomed to. And so we had some folks that had just planted and it drowned it all out. Okay. We had other folks, and then we had it where we didn't have enough rain. So some of that was part of it. Some of it was just technique on how we planted and whether, they drilled or whether they scattered or so.
What did you find successful where? Like I've heard horror stories with when people went in and tilled just because turning the soil up, put all the grass at the top, and the grass then overtook the hemp. And then there's others that, And so I'm just curious, what have you had?
We didn't have that problem. Ours was more weather related than it was anything else, which really hurt that more than anything else were those things.
Cool.
But there were some production ag tricks. When we had one grower in particular that said, well, let me show you if I turn my plow this way instead of this way, and let me show you how I tilled it, and here's what I did. And so but we don't know a ton, but what's interesting is we know more than anybody else, even in the little bit that we did, just being able to get a start. So it was we consider it a success, primarily because we learned some things not to do. And sometimes that's a part of it there too.
Yeah. So how do members access your content? If you have members that are involved, is it just a matter of attending meetings, or what does that share of information look like?
Yes. Well, for our members, we have currently a monthly catch-up time with them and tell them about all the projects and the things that we're working on, so they'll be aware. And let me explain that a little bit, as Ricky would say to Lucy, right? Let me explain just a second about what that means. So what we're talking about is we are not a cooperative yet. Today, we are an LLC that's got 3 members in it. Roger Ford, who I mentioned earlier, my partner from Kentucky, and our other partner, Max Howell, who is the membership coordinator. So what's going to happen is that once we issue the first offering document for people to actually purchase stock, all the assets of our LLC are dumped over into the co-op. Okay. And we expect that the first number of shares that we're going to issue is going to be right at 200 whenever we do that first offering document. So what we noticed as we were talking to hemp growers was, hey, I want to make sure that I don't miss the boat on that. I want to be one of those 200. So let me save me a seat and save me a seat in that. Okay. Now I want to make sure I'm in. And so we've got about 37, 38 folks right now that have said, I want in. And when they want in, they pay $1,000 to be able for us to hold them a spot. And then whatever that stock price ends up being whenever we do the offering document, we will credit that $1,000 to what they've already paid in. So those are who we are calling our members today. Other folks have said, love it, love the idea. I think it's great. When you get ready to do the offering document, let me know. And if I don't get in that first 200, I might get in on the next go round, and that's fine with me. So, and that's cool. So we do every Wednesday at 2:00 Central Time. Actually, today is the day we will be doing that. We do, as you participated a couple of weeks ago, we have what we call our Webinar Wednesday, and it allows people to have the similar format. I got to figure out how to get groovy like you are on all of this right now. I don't know if I'm there yet, but we allow folks to register up ahead of time, be able to ask questions of our guests. And then we are converting the audio portion of those interviews into a podcast. And the podcast should be hitting this week, as a matter of fact. So we started that back in February. And our focus, though, is really we try to make it much more for the grower. What is something that's going to impact her or impact him, to understand either about markets or things that are going on, or we have a legal update every month. And awesome. So that's a good bit of content. I know a lot of us, and I mean you, me, others, we have a lot of overlap with some of the same people out there. But I just think because the industry is so new, we all have got to be throwing everything we can to the greater world out there and letting them know more about, how cool this plant is. And so if you're the one that they picked up on the information and got them included and got them excited, hot diggity dog. If it was us or somebody else, or, I think the rising ship lifts all boats on that one. We're not.
Absolutely. Well, and I think for me, it's about really highlighting those that are doing it right. Right. And so it just says that, if we keep hearing the same company, being highlighted by multiple people, it really speaks to good business as well. Or
who you don't hear.
Right. Right. Exactly.
That may be just as important.
Okay, so there were some good questions here. Patrick, hi, thanks for joining us. And Jeff, hi. It's good to see you. I have missed you coming on. I know you've been out traveling lots, but Patrick said, the height of your tallest plants, and were there any issues with harvesting?
Yeah, it was real easy. There was no issue in harvesting because they didn't get any further up than about 8 inches. Okay. And so it was real easy to harvest. You went down and just yanked it up. Yeah. So it didn't. And part of that is because it didn't get enough water, or it got too much water, or they just planted it in a way that it was tilled in the wrong. And it was a part of that to do. So we just considered it. I mean, yes, we would have loved to have seen it, sprout on up there, right? But
no harvesting problems this year.
No, that's there you go. It wasn't real hard to go out there and bend over and yank up both of those plants. No, we actually had it grow. Not just the first, all of the ones that we had that planted, they got up to about 4 to 6 inches that they got within the first 2 weeks. All of them kind of fit within that frame. One of them had this ton of rain on top of it and washed it all away. Okay. Another one it got a little bit higher, and then the drought got it, and then some deer got it. And then, but we did see them get up about 8 or 9 inches before it all kind of, petered out one way or the other.
It's, as much as I would love to hear all the success stories, it's refreshing when we're being able to talk honestly about our challenges and our trials, and that it really isn't all rainbows and butterflies, because this has been
Heck no, but our members took the risk, right? And they were the ones that said, and as we've tried to tell folks too, particularly if hemp is somewhere new in your neck of the woods, look, this is America. You can go figure out this stuff on your own, or you can come join in with us as we're figuring it out. Okay. And then we can share that information together. So that's kind of the beauty of the co-op model.
I think that sharing of content and information is critical right now. More and more, the more places that we go and the more conversations that I'm involved in, collaboration comes up. And it isn't that the information's not there. It's that everybody's missing that one puzzle piece that somebody else has, right?
Right.
And instead of everybody trying to be the first and the best and the top, it's great being able to share and just, like I said, rising tides rises all boats. Okay, so back to your projects. We only have a few more minutes, about 10 minutes left, but I want to talk about these projects you're working on. And
let's talk about our crude oil piece. Is that okay? We can do that.
Yeah, please.
My partner Roger is an expert in renewable fuels. He's been involved in the renewable sustainable energy piece. I really don't know of anybody else in the hemp space that is really doing something in the energy world as much as what we are doing. I think, and I say that only to say, come in, the water's warm.
Please,
I just don't know how many other folks are doing it, right? I mean, we haven't cornered the market on the smarts. But here's what we know about hemp is that it as an energy crop, in order to produce what they call the megajoules. Now you're getting this from a liberal arts major, okay? So don't get me too far out there. But they measure that.
Well,
it's kind of like
Roger. When we talk to Roger, it's a different language sometimes. So I understand. I appreciate you speaking.
It's sometimes I have to be like Sakakawea in the middle of it. Go, whoa. Let me interpret between the two of y'all. Don't anybody scalp or shoot anybody in a minute. Hold on a minute. Time. So that's part of what my job is. So the BTUs or the megajoules that are actually produced of the energy that comes from hemp is one of the highest of any energy crops that can be grown, miscanthus and others that have been grown strictly in order to produce energy, right? And so that's what's really cool about it. For us, what we're creating is renewable natural gas, Okay, RNG for our acronym. So renewable natural gas can be used in every way that natural gas can be used for right now. So anything that you may know about that natural gas could be, from heating your home into being converted into turning a turbine to in order to make electricity for at a power plant, to converting it into biodiesel. All of those things are kind of typical, not too different. Natural gas comes out of the chute, it goes into another process, and then that process then turns it into X something. Okay. The backup to that makes it renewable, all of that, is the fact that we have, it's what's called a biodigester. And a biodigester means you put biomass of some sort into the digester. Yeah. And it's a big pot. Okay. And it comes into this big pot. And so that digester is a different type of digester. It's up and running right now in Europe. So it's not like it's an R&D thing, but it doesn't care what the feedstock of the biomass is that goes into it. So we're putting like municipal solid waste, garbage into it. We're also looking, depending on the location of where we are, we may want to put, chicken litter in it, or we may want to put, sewer sludge in it. But we're always making sure we're putting hemp into the mix of what we're doing. So biomass is essentially, this is the way I have to think about it. If Adam gave it a name in Genesis, when it dies, it gives off methane. Okay. At some point in time, it will decompose and methane gas will be released. So other than humans, we're not putting them in, but anything else we're putting into the mix. Okay. And so it doesn't care. So if we went to Seattle and we said, well, we've got to do something with a bunch of, salmon heads, and we need to go put those into the mix. Well, hot diggity. So the biodigester doesn't really care about what the recipe is. Other biodigesters that have happened around the globe have had to be real focused on one feedstock. It all had to be pine chips, or it all had to be corn stover, or it all had to be some other. This doesn't care. And so we're wanting to do as many of these projects as we can across the country when we have a contract. So our particular contract we have now is to produce bio crude oil. When I say crude oil, I mean just like crude oil, that instead of getting it out of the ground, we're getting it as a process from the gas. And so that gas is just kind of what they call Fischer-Tropsch, which has been around since forever. And that's not that, we got a different twist on it, but it's not that super different. I mean, on the technology. So we take all of these feedstocks, right? We put them into the biodigester. That feedstock, that particular project has got its own recipe, depending on where we are. And we design the biodigester around whatever those feedstocks are that are going to be there. Okay. Because they've all got different amounts of methane that we pull off. So they got to dial up all these dials and make all that jazz work. From there, then it goes next door to the sister facility. And that sister facility, all on the same campus, now takes that gas and is converting it into the crude oil. So we have a contract, a fuel production agreement in our hand from an energy company in Europe that says we are ready for all the oil you can send us. Our first facility is going to produce 1,000 barrels of oil a day. And there are 42 gallons per barrel. And I went to public school and I don't do much math, but that's about 42,000 gallons a day, okay, that are going to be produced from that. So locking in the feedstock, locking in the biomass, knowing what we're going to have, where are we going to put the facilities. And the thing we love about this is that this thing is lather, rinse, repeat. We may decide in another part of the country that somebody says, well, we just want the electricity to be generated. We do electricity and let's do a power plant and do that? Yes, ma'am, we sure can. Do you want to be able to do it in somewhere else? And we want to make biodiesel with it. Hot diggity, we'll go make biodiesel if that's what we need to do. So who wins in all of that? Back closing circle to the dividend is the co-op member. If you live in Vermont and you are growing hemp there. This first project, by the way, of what we're doing with the current bio-crude oil, that's going to be located somewhere along the Mississippi River, probably in the Mississippi Delta. We're kicking some tires and looking at some places maybe in Louisiana. We were in Missouri a day before yesterday, visiting with some folks that potentially putting the facility there for our first one. Okay, now we're ready to do more, but that co-op member from Vermont is going to be able to have in her dividend payment part of the revenue that is coming from selling 42,000 gallons a day of bio-crude oil, and she never grew one stalk of hemp to go into that facility. So some projects are not going to have that kind of margin, obviously, right? I mean, they're going to be a smaller one that's not going to have that kind of margin. But you put all that tithe into the storehouse, and sooner or later you'll be able to write a check out of it. So that's, again, goes back to our goal, which is how do we provide wealth for our members? Now.
Okay, so you said so much. I'm sure you saw my face, but I just cannot believe how much the hemp industry and the energy sector, or the transfer of energy, are running hand in hand with each other, and the amount of opportunity available for farmers when it feeds into this sector. And so, yeah, I'm very excited. And I'm very excited because it runs right in line with where our mission is and where we're heading with our initiatives. And so, yes, I'd love to continue talking one more time. How do people get in touch with you, Nick? I did share your email address.
Yes, hooray. And that's in there. And so it's email is terrific. nationalhempcoop.us is our website. And there, we do a little newsletter every week. And so that's something that we can, certainly look into. And I mean, keep up with what we're doing. If you're interested to learn more about the co-op itself, we've got an information packet we're glad to send to you. And our membership coordinator, Max Howell, would love to get on the phone with you and let you know more about what we do and how we do what we do. And if there are folks out there that are saying, I've got this great idea, this thing's really working, I'd love to expand what I'm doing, or I'm trying to figure out how am I going to finance my expansion, or how am I going to get started in the capital needs that I have here. We're not vulture capitalists, okay? We're not trying to come in and run anybody's company, take somebody's company over. We're just trying to figure out where there are more markets for our growers, and we can start to have some of that dialogue. So, and then we're on all that other, we're on LinkedIn, and folks can find me there and find me on. We apparently have an Instagram account. I don't ever check it, but I got folk.
Someone does.
Huh?
Someone does.
Yes, Alex
and
Greta. That's who does it. Alex and Greta do it. They do an awesome job. So that's
awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about this. We have an advisory board meeting coming up here pretty soon with the association, and so I'm really excited to bring up some of these topics as we start moving projects forward. For those of you that are listening, please register with your Hemp Hallway at hemphallway.com or on globalhempassociation.org. because on there you'll get all the notifications about what's coming next and how to connect. Shane, great seeing you today.
Yes, Shane.
Jeff, Bill, great seeing you guys. I'm really excited about what Shane has going on, what Bill's got going on as well. Great people to connect with. So find us on Global Hemp Association. Tomorrow we will be back. Another one of our members, Greg Girdman, is going to come on. He's got lots of experience in the CBD and cannabinoid and endocannabinoid space. So join us tomorrow morning also at 10 a.m. And Nick, I guess we'll sign off for now, and let's get back on a call because I've got lots more to talk about.
Heck yeah, let's do it. Thanks a bunch, man.
Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We'll talk later.